So this is a painting that I did recently, and I shared the process to my Instagram, and one of my followers asked for a tutorial on painting the mount. So I did this painting, and I actually had in mind another painting which I'd like to go with this one. So I have got another mount board to paint, so I'm going to sort of talk you through how I do it. But first of all, I'll show you a little bit of kind of how I go through the process of designing it. So I started off by putting my painting and the mount board into the frame I was going to use, and I took a photograph of it. So I uploaded the photograph into Procreate, which is an app on my iPad, a drawing app, and then it sort of allowed me to have a play around with ideas. So I started off thinking I'd use the oak leaves. So I just sketched some oak leaves but then I knew that I was going to do another gold back painting, and I kind of wanted them to be a pair, so I wanted something that picked out some of the colours and had a feel of the painting but wasn't necessarily oak leaves. So then I just started messing around with some squiggles, and then came up with that, which I then flipped and added some colour to so I could see what it would look like, and then added some extra bits to it, and then thought about some lines joining them. So it was really just, Procreate's really handy for kind of getting ideas, and I do a lot of my sketching, a lot of my draft work in Procreate. But then I came up with this design, which I've then duplicated and flipped, so it's up at the top as well. And I quite like that, but I just thought it needed something extra, so I played around with adding some lines in as well. So that was what I started my sketches on tracing paper from. So I'm going to put my mount board into my frame. Just lightly secure that in. So I haven't got the glass in it. And then once I found my pencil, I'm going to very lightly draw a line where the frame covers the mount board, so that when I take it out I know which bits will be visible, because obviously some of it's covered by the frame. So hopefully you can see there. So all of that's covered by the frame, so this is my working area. So I'm going to show you the technique that I use for painting these lines. I've been doing it for a very long time, and it does take a bit of practice, so don't go straight in with an expensive piece of mount board. Get some scrap paper and have a play around on that first. So I'm going to paint on my lines next, and I'm using red ochre, which is one of my favourite colours. And the way I paint lines is to put down a ruler so that it's parallel with that edge. So I'm going to paint the line on that edge. Actually, I'm going to put something underneath it first of all, or I'm going to end up making a mess of my tabletop. You can see this is the one I did the last one on. And then you want to kind of hold your brush a bit like that, and you're going to use this finger and run it down the ruler whilst keeping your arm locked. Now this takes a bit of practice, so have a practice on some scrap paper before you go painting your mount board, and then you position your brush where you want it, and keeping your hand locked, run your finger down the edge of the ruler like so. And then you can go back over it if you want, but just remember, don't get your finger in it, in the wet paint. And then I can go in and fill in the line afterwards. So then I'm going to turn my board. I'm going to do this line down here. So positioning my ruler parallel, getting some paint on my brush. Move it a little bit closer. And if your brush runs out of paint halfway down the line, don't worry, you just reload your brush, and then don't try starting where you finished. Start a bit higher up, and then it gives you a chance to sort of reposition your brush. And any corners, if you want to sharpen them up, you could just carefully do that by eye. So I'm going to go around and finish off those two lines. So I've just busily videoed this and talked through it, and actually had it in time-lapse mode. So what I've done is I've looked at my other painting, because I want to paint this line, but as you can see I've come in slightly from the edge. I haven't painted it so it butts up to the frame, so I want to do something similar on this one. So I'm putting this in front of me, moving the camera while I do it, so that I can see where I need to go, how far in I need to come. And then I've lined my ruler up so it's parallel with this pencil line, and then painted my line in. But I hope I've left enough space here, because what I'll do is I'll do the lines around the edge, and then I'll deal with the corners after I've painted the lines. So that line is dry, so I can put my ruler over it and line the ruler up with this pencil line. So I've got a line here now, so I know not to sort of start painting there. Probably want to move my ruler that way a little bit. Paint my line and then stop short of where I think I need the line to end. So now I can go around and tidy up my corners. So I can use my ruler. And it's the same principle of having my finger on the ruler and using the ruler as my guide. gone slightly over that. That would be better if I did it from the other angle, other direction. So I'm going to go around and tidy up all those corners. And there we have it. So I can take the board away. And then make sure that's all dry underneath before I test my painting with it. So now I just need to put in the decoration. So I've still got my tracing that I used for the other mount board, and I'm going to use it for this one as well. But what I did is I took a piece of tracing paper and just drew in where the lines are so that I know what space I've got to work with. So ideally that piece of tracing paper would come further up that way, and a rough idea of where the middle of this section is, so somewhere about there, and then if I had more tracing paper I'd mark on it there, and then you can sketch out your design onto the tracing paper so that you know it all fits within your borders, and you only need to do one corner. So what I've got here is one tracing, and I'm going to lay it, I've scribbled on the back of it, I've actually drawn on both sides of it, so it's got pencil on both sides. So I'm going to line it up, trace over it, which will leave a mark on the mount board, and then flip it over and do the other side, and then I will flip it down that way and do the same, and flip it that way and do the same, so that I've got a sort of ghost image of what I'm going to paint in each corner. When you do your testing, when you do your sketching, it is worth, before you transfer anything onto your mount board, just checking that when you flip it, they don't overlap each other in a way that you don't like. I mean, you might want them to overlap, but just make sure it comes to a point that doesn't look messy. Can't get my words out. So you might find it useful to tape down your tracing so that it doesn't move, or if the doorbell rings and you have to answer it, you can go and do that. When I use tape, I tend to stick it to my hand first, just so it loses a little bit of its tackiness, because you don't want it to tear your mount board. And then I'm placing my design where I want it. And then just taping that down. So this has got pencil on both sides, so I can just trace over like that. So without taking it off completely, if I pull that back, I'm not sure if you're able to see, but there's an outline of my design on the mount board now. And before I pull it off completely, I just check that I've got all the areas there, and I have. So So I can take that tape off. And then I can flip my design and place it where I want. Like so. Take that down and then do the same here. And then again, just check that I've got all the bits. There's a little bit missing there. That's all of it. And then I'm going to do the same in this corner. There we go, that's ready to start painting. So I'm just going to go around and paint in the greenery. There are some areas on the other one that I did that are gold, so these little dots and these smaller leaves are all gold, so I'm not going to paint those. I'm just using some sap green, might mix in a little olive green, but probably can't quite remember what I used on the first one. I think it was just sap green. So it's just a case of painting all the elements in. I'm using quite a fine brush. This one is a round tip 0. And there isn't really that much to explain on this other than put your design on. So I'm painting my piece using acrylic gouache because that's what I've used to paint the original Gould painting, and I want the colours in the mount to be the same. So acrylic gouache, watercolours will work well. If you're using acrylics, they can be quite sticky, so if you're going to add gold to it, which I'll show you in a minute, you just need to make sure that once your paint is completely dry, that dust it with a bit of talcum powder before you add the gold size, because otherwise you'll find that when you put your gold on, it won't just stick to the gold size, it'll stick to all your paint as well. So I've done it again. I did a video explaining about the gold size and how to apply it, and of course had my phone and time lapse again, so I will show you again. So this is acrylic gold size. This is just one that I bought on Amazon. It says water-based gilding glue. So when I say size, I mean the glue that holds the gold down. And then I have these little disposable paper cups, and just pour a little bit into your cup and put the lid back on the rest of it so it doesn't dry out. Now you can use it just like this, but it dries completely clear and it's quite hard to see where you've been on your paper. So what I do is I mix a little bit of watercolour paint in. So I've got yellow ochre here, which is one of the traditional, just check it is actually recording, is one of the traditional colours that goes underneath gold. So squeeze a little bit onto your brush. And then carefully mix it in to your gold size. You don't want to stir it too vigorously because you don't want to get bubbles in your gold size. You will inevitably get a few bubbles, but the fewer you have, the better. And just gently mix that in so that your gold size takes on the yellow ochre colour. I know that that will be dark enough, and then give your brush a really good wash in warm soapy water. I'm just going to leave mine standing there for a moment. And then I'm using a round tip brush, again the size 0. It's got a nice point on it. And what you want to try and do is to draw your outline of your shapes. So I've got the little leaves, so just draw the outline and then take a bit more size and kind of fill in the middle. So an outline, and then drop some into the middle. And doing this, it'll give you a nice kind of domed surface to your gold size. And if you want, you can use the surface tension of the liquid, and you can add even more to make it even more domed. Just don't go too far so that it pours out of the edges. And then I've got shapes like that as well. And then for the dots, rather than trying to paint a perfect round circle, use the other end of your brush, dip it in, and then dot it on the paper like that. And if your dot is too small, you can add a bit more. Got too much on there, tap it on the side, and then just go back over it. But careful not to sort of do that with it. You're not rubbing it, it's literally just dotting it down. Like that. So now there is a time-lapse video of me applying the gold size to the mount board. So I need to leave that to dry. It's better to leave it a bit longer rather than shorter to make sure it is completely dry. You can't, with this type of gold size, you can't really leave it too long. It'll stay tacky for hours and hours and hours and maybe even days. But just make sure that you wash your brush properly. So take it to the sink and with some warm water and soap, wash it. But really make sure you work into the end of that brush, because the gold size can ruin your brushes. So this is now ready for gilding. So I'm going to use transfer gold. So there's loose leaf and transfer leaf. This is 23.5 carat medium deep double transfer leaf from Gold Leaf Supplies. So the nice thing about transfer leaf is that it comes attached to this thin piece of paper, so you can kind of hold it and it's easier to handle than loose leaf is. So my gold size is now tacky, and what I can do is just place the transfer leaf on top, gently rub over and then lift off, and the gold will stick to the gold size and just there. So it's a case of going round and just making sure I've got all the areas that have got gold size. I've got some gold leaf on. Once I've been round and done it, put gold on all of it, I then take a soft brush and just gently rub away any excess like that. So you can see nice shiny gold leaf on it. So I'm going to carry on and put gold on the rest of it. Now, because this is a high carat gold, it won't tarnish. If you decide to have a go at this and you use something which isn't a high carat gold, there's lots of kind of metal leaf you can use, which is a lot less expensive than gold. You just need to be aware that it might tarnish over time. There are various varnishes and things you can get that you can put on top, but I like using the real gold, and then I know it's going to stay that colour forever. So next I'm going to go around and put some of the details in. So I've gone down a brush size, actually I've gone down a couple of brush sizes. This is now a 00 I've got, and actually could probably do with the new one. This one's looking a bit worse for wear. And I'm going to go around and just put some extra detail in, so some lines on the leaves. And also I'm going to do an outline around gold areas, just so they sort of pop a bit more. I think this brush might be a bit knackered, so I'm going to go and find myself a nicer small brush and carry on and just put details around all of it. So that is the mount finished. So you can see there's a nice contrast between the glint of the gold and the matte paint. So now all I need to do is to put my picture in behind it and put the whole lot in the frame. There we go, all done. So I think they look quite nice. It's quite a nice way of tying two different paintings together. Obviously there's different subjects in them, and I know they're both on gold, but the colours are slightly different, but with the same mount, decorated mount, it sort of ties them together and turns them into a pair. So I hope you found something useful in all of that. If you have a go and decorate your own mount board, and you want to show me what you've done, then best place to show me would probably be Instagram, where I'm Theodora.Gould, and you can tag me. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Really helps my YouTube channel if you click the like button, and if you want to know next time I upload a video, then click the subscribe button and YouTube will let you know.